We are live. Yes, we are. Looks like we have a couple people registered, but it is 6 o'clock, so I want to respect, our time, and we will get started with our live stream. Yeah, and they can always catch the live stream later. Uh, Looks like there's an issue with Facebook. For the people on Facebook, looks okay. Let me remove Facebook just to make sure. Yeah, I'm deleting Facebook because I'm not sure what's going on with it. Um, yeah, looks like we're good with LinkedIn and YouTube.
Great.
Hey, Pam.
Hi, Pam.
Can you hear us good? Are we good? Well, thanks for joining us. So this is our Q1 PMI-CIC on the air. I've been hosting these for the last year and a half with different guests and with different topics. And I am just excited to be on tonight with you, Janelle, because I wanted to have something for Women's History Month. And I feel like this is just perfect. It just makes complete sense to have you as my guest for Q1. And then we're also celebrating Women's History Month.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm so glad you're here with us today. And let me just give Pam her shout out now before I forget. Pam, thank you once again for connecting Janelle and I, because I think Janelle's background and what I'm trying to do for Women's History Month and overall with this live stream is just going to just add a different level to my goal. And I'm just excited to have you again, Janelle. So I am Florence Renee, VP of Publicity and Sponsorship for the chapter. As I was saying, we've been doing these live streams for about a year and a half. And the whole goal is to basically get the chapter involved in the conversation, what's going on social media, different topics around project management, tech, personal development, and hopefully help one or two people out there. That's really the goal. My live stream today is on LinkedIn and also on YouTube. I had to drop our Facebook stream, so I apologize to any Facebook watchers, but I will make sure that the recap is actually uploaded to Facebook so you can catch it later. Now, moving on, let's just get into a quick disclaimer. The views expressed on tonight's live stream don't represent the Project Management Institute, the PMI Central Illinois chapter, and or our current and past employers. They are our own views and thoughts from our own lived experiences and general knowledge, life lessons, things we've learned and picked up along the way. And so that's what we're going to be talking about and sharing with you. So with this quick introduction of me, I want you, Janelle, to tell us about yourself, anything that you're comfortable sharing,
Sure.
your background, how you started, and we can just weave the conversation from here.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
My name is Janell Frontone. I am Vice President and CIO at Memorial Health. I like to say I have had kind of a long and winding road in my career over the last 20 plus ish years. We won't say how many exactly. I really started from the very most entry point in tech and project management. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in English. I'm a big proponent of studying what you love, which isn't always the most practical, I will admit. So yeah, I graduated with a bright and shiny bachelor's degree in English, and my dad, I think, thought he was going to be supporting me for the rest of my life. But I landed a job in technical writing, which at the time, this will probably betray my age, was a brand new field. It was nobody really knew what it was, and I definitely was completely not prepared to be thrown into the world of technology. I had almost no computer background whatsoever. And my first project, I worked at State Farm, their corporate office in Bloomington. And I was on a project that was replacing all of the hardware and equipment in the agent offices across the country. It's a very large project. And one of their goals was to create kind of standardized processes along the way. And so my job was to capture all of this and sit through the data modeling and process modeling conversations and really capture policies and procedures just from the conversation. So it was a really great learning opportunity. It was very much kind of a sink or swim environment. But I found that I really enjoyed it. And about a year and a half in, our process modeler had to leave the company. And so they asked me, you've been in all these conversations. Could you take over the data and process modeling? And I had a 1-day online crash course and started doing data and process modeling. And that led me to project coordination and project management. And so it was about a 6 or 7 year career there at State Farm, where I went from, bare bones technical writing, knowing nothing, to, being a technology project manager. And from there, I really transitioned into more of the software side as a PMO analyst. So coming in and working right under the director of a PMO and learning what PMOs were. And then really transitioned into program management, where I stayed for about 12 years at a global international bank, HSBC. It was based out of the Chicago area here in the United States. And I had teams that were, overseas in Asia, in India. I had some in the UK, got to do some traveling. So that was lots of fun. And did that, until my youngest was about a year old. And then I actually took some time off, which is also not, if you follow the script of how you're supposed to do your career, something that you really aren't supposed to do. But it was an important thing for me to do for my family. And I did. I like to say I took 2 years off. I was a really great stay-at-home mom for 1 year, and I was a really terrible stay-at-home mom for another year. And ended up seeing this opportunity at Memorial, which was a completely different type of job. For one, I'd never been in healthcare, but it was, working somewhere locally in my community that was, really more of a nonprofit environment, more about giving back. It was something that really appealed to me. And so while I had been a VP and a global program manager, I told my husband, I really want to take this job. And it's managing a PMO of, I think we had 7 people at the time. And he thought, maybe I was a little crazy, but was happy to get me out of the house. And it's been a great ride here at Memorial. So started that 7 years ago. It expanded to including integration when we brought in a new hospital and how we were going to integrate their people, processes, and technology. So we combined that with the PMO, then was promoted again to a strategy execution administrator role that brought really that strategy element in and added that to our team. And then just in October was offered the opportunity to take this CIO position.
Wonderful. So a very unconventional background, really.
Yeah, that's fair.
For CIO. It's not like you were, like an engineer to begin with. You don't have, computer science degree.
Sure don't.
So did you find that you had to prove yourself, maybe work a little bit more than required, or how was that like for you?
Yeah, I definitely have approached things consistently from a learning and a curious mindset, really recognizing, what I do bring to the table, but also what I don't. And really trying to learn from the people in the room that I knew things that I didn't know. And I think that that's important in any career and in any development process. It's okay to know what you don't know and acknowledge it. And really build those relationships with people that can teach you new things. And I'll say, when it was time to get my master's degree, I had a choice to do an MBA or study something I was really interested in, which was change management. I really wanted to learn about, especially when we're doing these large technology implementations, the people side of that so often gets, disregarded. And I really wanted to spend some time digging into the theory and just understanding how to do that better. And so I chose, again, the unconventional path. I didn't do an MBA. I did a master's in organization behavior and change management. And I think all of that kind of has bolstered my unique offering and what I bring to the table. And I think the key really for me has always been just to be really honest, especially when opportunities have presented themselves. And, I've never tried to pretend like I can do things I don't know how to do, but I do know how to build a great team. And I know how to build a team that, makes up for the things that I don't know.
And so that's a good advice, because oftentimes we've seen people who aren't really, who don't have all the stuff, right? And then they pretend, the whole imposter syndrome. Did you ever suffer from that initially, or even today? Do you have any of that going on? And what are your ways of dealing with it?
Yeah, I think every time I've had a new opportunity present itself, I've had to struggle through imposter syndrome. And I'll say, even coming to Memorial, I had a very different experience than a lot of the leaders that I worked with here. And so at first it was kind of shocking and hard for me to hold on to what I knew, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I had a really good leader that I worked with here who struggled with imposter syndrome as well. And she really gave me some good advice about keeping people close that could kind of help ground you in what you know. And just being willing to say what you don't. I really think for me, that's been a key, not trying to pretend like I know everything, but where I don't and where I'm not sure, just being open and honest about it. And then always being a learner is really how I kind of buffer my own self. If I know I'm coming into a situation and there's stuff I don't know, I will spend hours digging through research or just trying to educate myself and give myself enough footing that I feel confident.
Wonderful. So it's basically confronting it, not hiding from it, just, being honest with yourself and getting yourself resources and tackling it one day at a time. I guess that would be the strategy.
Definitely.
Now, when it comes to your career, very unconventional background, but then again, is it really that unconventional? I don't know. It's really not.
Yeah. So I'm a podcast junkie a little bit, and I like to listen to a lot of different podcasts and just kind of learning more about the CIO role and how it's developed over time. I think 10 years ago, CIOs were very much technical people.
Mhm.
They could build a server if you needed.
Mhm.
But today it's really evolved into being much more of a business translator and much more of a strategic thinker, and being able to kind of link all of those pieces together. And that in itself is a unique and valid skill set. And I think that's one that project management can really develop in you as you progress your career, if you take that viewpoint.
I love that. I love that. On that topic, let's go into mentoring, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So starting out, did you made sure you really went and got yourself a mentor, maybe 2, 3 mentors? Did you have any sponsor, or did you kind of like try to go it alone and then you realize you need people to like formal mentorship?
Yeah.
How was that experience for you?
I think early in my career, I did try to go it alone. I think I felt like looking for a mentor would show weakness, or, would make people question if I was, qualified to be in the room.
Mhm.
But, you trip up enough times and you kind of realize that you don't know everything and you do need help. And I was lucky, at a point in my career to have a couple of really good leaders that served as mentors. And that kind of taught me the concept of getting your own, board of advisors and being able to pull from people in various parts of your life. So, some from my work life, some from my personal life, some from my church family and other places, people that I trusted, and just getting a breadth of input, especially at key junctures or when I had big decisions.
Wonderful. Now, one of your board advisors, I think it sounds like it included your husband, right?
Yeah.
Is he in the business, or is he like your family basically? Are they in tech? Are they in project management? Like, are you the only one? How do you navigate that? Like, how do you
Yeah.
talk to your folks, the closest ones to you, about what you do? I guess that's where I'm trying to go.
Yeah, it's hard. So no, my husband is a financial advisor. So we had more to talk about when I worked for HSBC and kind of in financial services, but not about my true career, which has always been project management or projecty things, as I like to say, kind of create a really big bucket. And no one in my family is in tech at all. My sister's an attorney. And so we come from varied backgrounds. But I think we all share a desire to be the best professional we can be. And at the end of the day, that's been more beneficial for me. And honestly, having an opinion that's outside the box or outside the room or outside the normal conversations I'm in, I find that those people really provide me sometimes better advice because they make me think about it differently, which is really, for me, a lot of times what I need in those moments.
That makes sense. Like, you don't have the echo chamber. That
Correct.
makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of, I think I heard your first 7 years you were in that technical writer position.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, would you have stayed that long? Because now the wisdom, the conventional wisdom now is 3 years top per role, maybe two, maybe one. I don't
Yeah.
know. So, when you think back over your career, any lessons learned from that? Like, how long you stayed in that role? Would you have done anything different?
Yeah. I'm kind of a believer in just following the path
Mhm.
that opens up for you. I think I was at my first position or company the right amount of time, really. It was a hard choice to make to leave, but it had given me enough growth to go from tech writing to data modeling to project management. That was a good skill set kind of baseline for me. It was a critical juncture to switch and really go into program management at that point and really learn about PMOs, which I found, if I'm very honest, I actually don't love project managing myself. I
Mhm.
don't love the details, but I didn't really know that until I was kind of exposed to other aspects of the industry. And
Mhm.
it's my home really was in that more strategic leadership portion, whether it was in program management and managing PMs or whether it was in the PMO side. So I guess I say I don't think I stayed too long. The
Mhm.
one I was in a long time was doing that program manager role at HSBC. That one was about 12 years.
Okay.
But, even in that, and this is what I love about this career path, I learned so many different things. I had 2 or 3 different global programs I was responsible for throughout that time, and every one gave me exposure to different people, to different countries, to different types of tech. And so I felt like I was always learning. And I guess that's always been my barometer. If there's more for me to learn, then I'm happy to stay where I am. At the point that I kind of feel like I've hit a wall or there's nothing more for me to develop or expand on, then I find that I start to get ready to find something else.
Gotcha. I think I am like that too. Like, the learning. I'm not so much into the job hopping that I see going on. I'm not knocking it or anything like that. We're not knocking it, but I'm into what am I learning? What else can I learn? I'll just do laterals and just pick
Yeah.
up different skill set. And but I will say, to spend 7, 12 years with a company, that's like a unicorn nowadays, right?
I know it is. It's kind of ironic because if you talk to most people on my team or people who work closely with me, they know that I change things constantly. And I think it drives some of them crazy, but I'm always looking for how can we do it better? How can we do it differently? How's the industry changing? What's something new that we can try? And I personally don't love change. As far as for myself, it takes a lot for me to leave a company. I tend to have kind of deep roots and be a bit of a loyalist. And so if I feel like there's more for me to do, more people for me to connect with, if I've built strong relationships with my teams, it's hard to leave.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's wrong to leave. I think a lot of times it's the right thing to do. I think you have to gauge your own options and your own opportunities to learn, and also the corporate culture and how healthy that is for you and for what you need at that time.
Right. Yes. Very good advice. Now, when it comes to, I know we're jumping ahead. Now you are into the C-suite, you have the CIO, the three letters behind your name. Have you mapped out that track, like your next, I don't know, your next 2-3 years, what you want to do in that role?
I have. I'm more on an 18-month track at this point. It's about as far out as I can think. But I do. I have some goals, and I have some great partners. I have an executive partner at Gartner, which has been really helpful just to find somebody that's been in the industry, that's been a CIO. I've never been one before. So, get some lived experience from people that I trust. And kind of, I have had to build out my advisory board a little bit differently now because I need different things that I've never needed before. So yeah, I do. I have about an 18-month plan of things that I kind of want to do here within this role and in my new division.
Love it. Now, when it comes to realizing that your board of advisors had to change, was that hard for you to kind of like let some people go? You know what I mean? Because you've had relationships with them. Like, how do you let a mentor go? How do you move on and outgrow your mentor? How does that work out?
Yeah, I would love to say that I know exactly how to do that. But if I'm honest, I think I'm asking them fewer questions. I'm kind of letting it happen a bit naturally. I'm not like issuing any breakup notices. I'm not sending out, any messages to make something official. But the reality is that I don't know. I need different things. And that's happened. This is not the first time that that's happened to me in my career. And I find that it kind of happens naturally because they kind of know they can't help. They don't have the experience that you need now. And I think if they're a good mentor and you've really developed the relationship stays, even if the official role doesn't.
That makes sense. Now, do you naturally seek out women mentors, or does it just happen? How do you make sure you have that balance?
Yeah. I think it just happens, to be honest. I have not, and this is just my experience, I have not found a lot of male mentors that have been really helpful or that could identify with me or I could identify with. And that's not to say that they don't exist, because I do have some, but by far, I think the lived experience that I have as a woman, it just seems like some of the roadblocks or headwinds I'm facing, men can't necessarily identify with. And a lot of the women that I've worked with as formal mentors or just as peers have all experienced a version of the same thing.
Gotcha. Now, when it comes to, the balancing act on that topic, I'm just gonna take the conversation where it needs to go.
Sure.
Work-life balance. How do you do that? First of all, is that even possible, especially with your level, your new role? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think I just actually talked to my team about this in our last all hands meeting about, work-life balance and it really being more about work-life choices and learning to be okay with the choices that you choose. And, there were times in my career where I made choices to invest in my children and be home more and make sure I left every day at 4 and whatever. And I was okay with that. And during those times, I didn't, I wasn't trying to advance my career. I was trying to, invest in my children. And I think just learning maybe to trust ourselves and trust the choices brings the balance, if that makes sense. So I've also had times where I knew I was taking on a really demanding program. I knew it was going to be a lot of long hours. I kind of set boundaries for myself. I'm going to do this for 18 months and then I'm going to need a break. And I just have tried to keep myself to those promises that I've made internally in those instances. But again, I made a choice and I was okay with the choice because I knew I had boundaries around it.
I like how you reframe it to choice, work life choices.
Yeah.
Um, because I think the balancing, it's like chasing perfection.
Yeah. And I think the balance it's kind of an ongoing thing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, from day to day, I may think my plate will be less full. And then by the time I get in or I'm leaving for the day, it's filled up and I thought I was balanced and now I'm not. And it's just an ongoing, you're always doing trade-offs, right? So I'm going to be okay with not finishing that presentation and going home for dinner. I'm going to be fine with it. And I think just learning to hold myself accountable for owning the choice, I think is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's a choice and intentional choice.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Now, with respect to mentoring, I love mentoring as a topic. So that's why we have several questions on it. Do you have mentees, and do you have a specific way that you go about mentoring other people? Do you prefer mentoring people within your job or external? Like how do you function as a mentor?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Um, I've always left it up to the mentees. So at different points in my life, I've had more, and at other points, especially when my kids were really young, I didn't really have any outside of my job. Um, I think for me now, at the point I'm at in my career, I'm really passionate about helping people learn how to become mentors. And we've done several things here at Memorial where we've created mentoring programs. And so trying to mentor my leaders on how to be good mentors and how to mentor their teams to be good mentors and, really creating that reciprocal environment so that it's not always, I don't want it relying on me, right? There's things that I can bring to the table, but there are so many things that my team can bring to the table. And so really trying to prop them up and making sure that they see the value they bring and that they can mentor each other, really kind of creating that more of a symbiotic type mentorship than everybody just looking to me.
Gotcha. When it comes to mentoring people in general, whether you're doing it through your leader or to the actual person, are you more of a team, meet them where they are, or like you mold them, you see something in them and you basically go at it and try to like mold and shape them? What's your approach?
You know, I kind of, I first want to find out what their goal is, because that tends to kind of determine the approach. I think a little bit in my case, I've definitely had people that want to work on one specific thing, almost like a skill set. In which case I'm happy to hone in on that thing and really help them work through it. And then I've had others that are just kind of like, I like the path you've taken. I appreciate these things about how you engage with other leaders. I'd like you to mentor me. And in those cases, I really do try to figure out what is the path you see yourself on and what can we develop to help you get there, you know?
So it's not like you dictating, it's more of a combination. Yeah.
It really is. And now that would be different if you were asking me how I lead my direct reports, that I would handle that probably differently. But in a mentorship relationship, I feel like they're seeking me out. And I really want it to be mentee led
Gotcha.
rather than mentor.
Yeah.
I don't want to direct how that path goes because I'm really there to help Sherpa them to where they're trying to get to. And in a lot of cases, I don't necessarily even know the person that well. From a relationship, we're building that relationship as we go. So for me to presume, I think I see something and I want to develop it is a little bit unfair. Now, again, totally different than the people that have worked for me for years. I definitely see things and try to develop.
How do you go about that then? Leading your team members, your direct reports. What's the difference, if you don't mind? High level.
Yeah. I think for me, the difference is with my team and the ones that especially the ones that I've worked with for a while and I know well, and I can see their areas of opportunity that sometimes they can't even see. I try to give them opportunities to develop without making it super apparent. So I'm not necessarily going to say, hey, I want you to take this assignment and I really want you to focus on X. I more say, hey, there's this opportunity. I would really like for you to consider how you're relating to other leaders while you're performing this set of tasks or this mini project or whatever it is, or we have this opportunity to really hone in on our processes. While you're doing that, I'd like for you to think about how you could engage your team members, where you could delegate. So kind of giving them tasks within tasks, I guess, but then watching how they own that and how they use it. Because even that's a bit of a data point in their development,
That makes sense. And it's sensible too. Because sometimes you think you know somebody's goal and they don't even, or you think you know what somebody could achieve, but really could be something completely different than what they really want.
Yeah.
And sometimes some people don't even know what they want.
It's true. I actually had a conversation with one of my leaders that I've worked with for years here at Memorial just today. And we're going through an exercise of, let's try to figure out, you don't have to tell me what you want to be when you grow up or what your end destination is. Because honestly, if someone asked me, I wouldn't even know the answer to that. But I usually know my next step. So let's think about what you want your next step to be. What do you love doing? What have you done that you really would rather never do again? And what's something that you haven't done that you'd really like to try? And let's start there. And let's see what opportunities I can craft that can help you do more of what you want and get you some of those things you've never tried. And we'll try to do less of what you've tried that is not for you.
Makes sense. Complete sense. Now, when it comes to your team and you being in tech, what are the, with agile and all different transformation, AI, how are you preparing your team and your leaders to, I guess, embrace all these different changes that's happening?
Yeah. Thank goodness for my master's degree, right? I wish I could say that was solving all my problems. It's not, but I think one of the things that we've really tried to build in our team is the concept of flexibility. And when I started in project management, it was only waterfall. There was nothing else, and it was pretty rigid. You did the things you did for as long as you said you were doing them. And I think during COVID, especially, and especially during COVID in healthcare, we had to learn to be really, really, really flexible with very little notice and very high stakes. And I honestly think that's one of the positive things that my team has taken away from going through the pandemic is you really can do things differently and do them just as well. Sometimes you don't know that until you don't have another option, but learning how to create hybrid methodologies, learning how to embrace Agile a little more, learning how to help our tech teams who have always been really waterfall consider doing things a little bit differently. I just think that flexibility. I like to say we're not here to be guardrails. We're here to be guardrails. We're not here to be train tracks, right? So we want to just keep things going the right way, keep people from crashing into each other, but we don't have to be so prescriptive, right? We can allow some flexibility and some differences for different business types or business teams and what they need.
Gotcha. Now, when it comes to AI, what's your outlook on that?
In general, I think AI is going to be revolutionary in the tech industry. I think it's already started to become that way. I do think, governance is a huge part of who I am and how I've grown up in the industry and my job now. So there will always be a part of me that's like, ugh, let's get guardrails, right? I'm and introducing it in the healthcare environment carries some pretty high risk. And so how do we do that safely? How do we use the benefits of AI and some of these other, process automation and some of these other technologies that are coming up that really have a lot to offer, and especially in an industry that's so strapped for resources. So any optimizations we can get, could really benefit. We also, at the end of the day, we care for patients. And so we don't ever want to put that at risk. We don't want to put their security at risk or their information at risk. And we definitely don't ever want to put lives at risk. So how do you strike the balance? And I think that's going to be the key to success for AI over the next 5 years is how do we strike a balance that is positive?
Gotcha. Now, when it comes to PMI, PMI is trying to lead the way or update their strategy when it comes to AI and project management, product management. Do you see a role for PMI, project managers, in this tech revolution and the way healthcare responds? Do you see any jobs going on? Like, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think it's a really valid question, and I know it's something that's top of mind for everyone, especially in industries where we've seen layoffs over the last, couple of years. I think if you are approaching your role and bringing to it that relationship element, that strategic thought element, and kind of that bridge approach of trying to bridge the business users' needs and goals with the technical team, AI will never replace that. What AI will replace is if your whole focus is updating your project plan and keeping people right on the task, and you're doing, a little bit more of what I would consider the administrative pieces, and you've made that your entire career. I think there are pieces of that will definitely be automated with AI. It's the human element that technology will never replace. And honestly, I tell my teams all the time, even my tech teams, that's really where our value is doing the thought work and the thought partnership with our business teams.
Makes sense. I guess we'll have to see, right? But it does make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think for PMI, if the focus can be how do we automate more of the redundant work that we all are doing all the time to free up more time to do the thought partnership, and then how can you develop that competency in project managers, because it hasn't always been that big of a focus, working on that bridge from corporate strategy down to the project work. There's a lot to be done there and a lot of benefit to be provided. So I guess if somebody was asking my opinion or my advice to PMI Global or whomever, that would be where I would focus. If it was me, I would focus on what can we develop as far as methodologies and tools and certifications to help develop competencies in that strategy area, and where can we be on the forefront of helping to develop AI to do some of this other work.
Makes sense. Well, I hope they're listening. I hope somebody shares our live stream and pass the word. Let's hope. Oh my goodness. So many changes. I'm just like, I'm anxious, but at the same time, I'm excited to see what's next.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like the world is just going to look completely different from what we're living today. Now, when it comes to, we're talking about transformation, things that is impacting or will impact our work. What about DE&I, for example? How do you see that going, and maybe in the future?
Yeah, so I can only give my personal experience here, that my observations of
Mhm.
DEI, because I've not worked in that field specifically. I think I think there's a big opportunity to incorporate the principles and kind of the what I would consider some of the end goals of DE&I very practically in project management. And I'll give you an example. Here at Memorial, we're working on developing a digital strategy, and I actually asked our diversity, equity, and inclusion officer to be a part of that because as we're thinking about things like how do we engage with patients, how do we reach patients, I really want to be sure that we're incorporating the full scope of our patient population and we're not inadvertently disadvantaging one over another. And I think little things like that where we're really looking at how do we give voice
Mhm.
and make sure that we have all representation at the table for some of these even decisions that may not seem that important. I think that's really where we'll start to see the real value and kind of incorporating it into the bones of the company and how things operate rather than just having kind of a DE&I team that sits off in an office somewhere and does more event type, you know,
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
I guess that would be that's my opinion.
Yeah. I totally get it. I think that would be the wise approach. Having them give them a seat at the table and listening to their inputs. I'm not saying don't do the events and everything else.
Yeah,
It's
agree.
all important,
Yes.
but I think there has to be a little bit more. Like we have to take it a step further. That would be
Yeah.
my little take on that.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think that there's so much to be brought to the table and there are a lot of gaps to close. And I think in general, the gaps are there because the people making those decisions or in those conversations don't see them. And so we have to reframe it somehow. We have to get people in the room that can help us see the gaps so that we can start to close them.
Yeah, yeah. We can't leave the gaps. We gotta face them
Yeah.
and correct them and address them. Basically, with I think I have a enough of an insight of you as a leader when it comes to DE&I. Is it equally important to your organization? Um, any kind of thought on that you want to share?
Yeah. I know Memorial has made an investment in DE&I, and I think in the healthcare industry overall, there's been a pretty well publicized push. And healthcare inequities are something that are talked about in a lot of forums. And I I know that healthcare is a little challenging because it's so regulated, and so to make changes, it's a really arduous process, and a lot of times takes involvement up to the highest levels and some of the largest government organizations in the United States. So I don't know that we'll see changes as quickly as maybe we could in some other industries, but I do know that there's definitely a strong support
Mhm.
for the changes. There's a lot of conversation and work being done to start the process.
Got it. And honestly, even as a patient myself, or just regular person, all we can ask is for organizations and leaders to know that there's an issue, there are gaps,
Yeah.
and to be willing to confront and put some solutions on the table.
Yep.
How long it takes, that depends on the smart people, right?
Right.
It,
Yeah.
but somebody has to like acknowledge because you can't fix what you're not acknowledging. That's
Yeah.
my view on many things.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times we can get so caught up in trying to fix the macro issues, and they're very big and they're very ingrained, and it will take a lot of wheels to turn at a lot of organizations before we can really see, I think, like a wholesale change. But
Right,
I think micro changes we can make every day. We can each make them. We can make
right.
them the way we're approaching things, with the way we're engaging. We can look at our own individual teams, even if they're small, and say, do I have appropriate representation here? Do I really, when I look across my sphere of influence, do I see diversity? Am I being inclusive? And I think if we can all start there, whether it's how we're engaging our patients or our customers or our clients or our teams or whatever, I think that's really where the change, the grassroots change comes.
Right, right. I love that. Now, when it comes to, I don't know, your team, the work that you do, um, like you said you don't really like the project manager, the task part, right? You like
Right.
the strategy.
Yeah.
How soon did you know that about yourself? Um,
I think when I first got into more PMO level work, um, I think that's when it kind of started to click that what I really, really enjoyed was about 3 steps above the actual task management. I will say I would not change the way my path went. I would never have wanted to lead project managers if I had not been a project manager. I think it was important for me to do all of the things.
Yes.
Because it gives me, I know what I'm asking.
Yes.
And I'll be honest, even as CIO, we have some really large technology projects. And in the last 6 months, I've had to take a pause, step out of what I'm doing, take a day, get the PMs in a room and dive all the way down to, let me see your project. Where's your charter? Because we missed something, right? Let's talk about, how did we miss this? How can we do better next time? If you were doing this again, and kind of do that on the spot mentoring, which I could never do if I didn't know that first you have a charter that then leads you to high level requirements, that then leads you to business requirements, So I think it's important. But yeah, the first time I got a taste of what strategy actually looked like, I think was the first time I was like, I don't ever want to do that other stuff again.
Mm-hmm. Now, so obviously the way you went about it is the way you went about it. No regrets whatsoever. If somebody were to want to get into strategy, do you have any advice? Is there a quick way? Is there any hack to get into strategy? What would you say?
Strategy is kind of a challenging one, because I think in most organizations there's a political element to how strategy gets developed that you can't get around, right? It's always done at the highest level of the organization. You're never going to have a strategy team that's creating, the strategic vision. That's always going to be done behind closed doors with the C-suite and then kind of cascaded down. So I think I would have 2 recommendations. One would be to make really strong relationships. Get yourself in the conversation with people that are in the conversation to start to build at least a foundation of, hey, I would like to help with that. Even if you're just sitting in the room to take the minutes, right? Like, just try to get yourself at the table as an observer to just begin to build your own knowledge base. Because that, I think, is the hardest part if you're really trying to get into strategy work. So number 1, I would say probably build your relationships, build those foundational relationships. And then the other I would say would be to try to do your research, so that when you're in the conversation, A, you kind of know what's going on, but B, eventually you could have something to add, even if it's offline with the person you have the relationship with, to say, hey, you guys are doing this. Have you thought about this? Or, there's this new technique, or, there's this method for XYZ. It'll be slow, but I think the combination of the 2 would be my recommendation.
Gotcha. So it's not like, it's more relationship.
I think so.
Strategic.
I do, because it's not like you can go and learn how to do strategic planning, for instance. But I think if you're coming up through project management, your real value, and honestly, where there's a gap that I see in most corporate, arenas, is not, they have people that can do strategic planning. They can get their 10 high level goals that are really high level. Where they struggle is, how do you cascade that down into something that we can actually do? Like, what are the projects in there? What are the programs of, what are the work streams, and how will we know when we've achieved it, and what are we measuring against? That's the skill set that I think there's a lot of opportunity for. The problem is you have to get in the conversation to help form the right strategic goals that you can then actually cascade down into things. And so I don't think I have any really great answers. It's a little bit of a process, a little bit of relationships, and kind of educating yourself so that when you're in the conversation, you can bring something to the table.
Gotcha. I think that was very good advice. Now, when it comes, you mentioned politics.
Yeah.
We do have about 10 minutes. I'll try to get this in there because it's important, right? Because some of us don't know how to play that game. Call it what you want. It is a game. Any tips for maneuvering that landscape? How did you do it?
I would say, first, I try not to think of it as a game. I try more to think of it as relationships.
Okay.
And really building trust. For me, that's been foundational in just how I've built my career. I want people to trust me, and I honestly want to be there. I want to understand where they're coming from, and I want to try to find the common ground where we can be working towards something together. So I would say, first, build genuine, trusting relationships with people. But then also, my team would probably comment in the chat if I didn't say it out loud, play the long game. So you don't have to get every single step you wanted to still make it to the right place in the end. So be willing to flex, be willing to try things differently, but always keep your end goal in mind. There's a lot of ways to get there, and a lot of ways to help other people get there with you.
I love that answer. Again, reframing. I think you said relationships versus game. I guess looking at it that way makes it more warm and fuzzy. And I think it's something that many people would say, how do I play that political?
Yeah, it's maneuvering for sure.
Maneuvering, yeah.
Games, a lot of times they have a winner and a loser, right? And I guess for me, there's definitely something I see. There's a gap I'm trying to close. There's a somewhere I'm trying to take the organization. So that's true. And if I get there, then I do feel a little like I win, right? But I also feel like the organization wins if I get them there, because I genuinely believe that it's what's best. And that's based not only on what I think, but also on my relationships and the feedback that I'm getting from my peers and the people I work with.
Wonderful. I love that. So we do have about 8 minutes left, maybe less than that. I do want to get to some final words, just to try to wrap up. Aspiring female leaders, I think you've basically given quite a bit of advice: relationships, work-life choices, long game. I mean, once I replay this, I'm sure I'll have more on my list. Is there a hierarchy? Is there one that's more important than the other? Or what would be the one thing you would want an aspiring female leader to focus on?
I think it's probably, first of all, developing yourself. So being, kind of where we started, honestly, being okay with acknowledging where you're naturally strong and where you're not, being willing to build your team to fill your gaps, because doing that allows you, A, to look better, but B, to prop them up and really give them the opportunity to be seen for what they bring to the table. So I think first, be willing to not be perfect. Don't try to pretend like you're something that you're not, and be honest about it. But also at the same time, be honest about what you do bring to the table, because you're there because you bring something. So I think sometimes we can tip almost too much to the other side, right? Where we become self-degradating a little bit and kind of pull back. And I think you do have to be willing to say out loud, no, I can do that. I do bring that to the table. And sometimes we have to have really hard conversations. And I'm sure this doesn't only apply to women, but that's my lived experience. There have been times in my career, especially around the times when I've been out on maternity leave for some reason, or when I've been pregnant, where male leaders have, I really believe, thought they were doing me a favor by taking something off my plate that I was really passionate about. Or there was a time when my son was about 6 months old, and we were doing a world tour, they called it. So it was 6 weeks of traveling to, Asia and the UK. And it was long, and they didn't even ask me to go because they made the assumption that I wouldn't want to go. And I'm not going to lie, it was really hard, but I went and had that conversation with my leader and said, first of all, I deserve to be on this. This is my project. So I deserve to be in the room. I deserve to be in the meetings. And it came down to, they thought they were doing me a favor, but advocating for yourself to even get to make the choice. Right. And then being okay with the choices you make.
Right. Awesome. Love it. Do you have any special, I know with the full plate, kids, family, new role, do you have any special initiatives, causes that you support? Are you involved with PMI, any organizations that you love and care about?
I do have several organizations that I'm involved with locally, but if I'm being totally honest, the majority of my time right now is keeping up with kid things. I have a daughter who's a freshman in college, so that's a whole new experience. And I have 2 boys that are in junior high. So between all of their sports and then my job, that's pretty much my focus right now. And I'm okay with that.
Yes. Choices.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to. All right. So we are at an hour, just about an hour. I think we covered so many topics. We gave out so many tips. And I'm sure, this is a stream where you kind of have to watch it more than once. And that is something that I intend to do myself, because I think I will definitely learn a couple things and apply a few things on my side. Now, I don't know if we have any questions.
We do have a question from
Let me see.
It looks like.
Let me see if we have any chat. How do you deal with people playing politics as a game and not generally building relationships with others?
Well, I wish that wasn't a question, first of all, but I think we've all worked with those people. Tell you what I tell my kids, the right thing is always the right thing. So it's been true in my career. And again, I'm playing the long game. So it may not work out in that conversation, in that meeting. There have been plenty of presentations I've given where someone with a different political motivation has, stood up and basically tried to burn it all down, or it hasn't ended well for me. And that's okay. There's something for me to learn in that situation, but I'll also tell you that in the end, how I've handled that has always served me well, and how that person handled it did not serve them well. So I really think there's a little bit of an element of karma, and just trusting the process and really focusing on yourself, and let the other stuff play out, because it does. It may not play out even while you're there or while you see it, but it will. And if you do the right thing and you're showing up for the right reasons and really building genuine connection, people will start speaking up for you. They'll start to advocate for you even when you're not in the room, because they have a real relationship and know you. And that's really, I think, where it becomes powerful.
I love that answer. I love it. I think that was the only question, but I think we covered so many topics.
We did.
We preemptively answered so many questions too. So with that, Janell, I just want to thank you one more time. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for being a team sport and wanting to get online with me. And again, Pam, thank you for connecting us.
Thanks, Pam.
And so with that, I will let you go, and the live will be up for God knows how long, and people can watch it, like I said, more than one time and get a lot of nuggets from it. That's my hope. And I think you really delivered tonight as far as the advice, and yeah, So I can't thank you enough, Janell, for doing
Thank you
this.
for having me. It's my pleasure, really.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Of course.
So
Bye-bye.
I will stop the live and we are out.